Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. This time, the cloud. Yes, there's coffee in that nebula. There's coffee in that nebula. That's not the title. The cloud is the entire title. Just like the entire name of our Facebook is It's All Been Trek Before. There's coffee in that nebula too. Come check it out. Follow us there. A lot of fun. We might become your favorite Facebook group. And you don't even have to, we're not even going to annoy you. Just come find us. Follow us. Lots of fun. Like I said, it's kind of a companion piece to this. You know, engage with us there. Tell us what you think about what we're doing, but only if it's positive. It's all been Trek Before. Follow us on Facebook. Right now, we're going up to the cloud. Voyager. It's all been Trek Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Most of your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Hey, I'm Shane.
Jimmy-Jerome. And we have a brand new co-host with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Tara. I am a huge Trek fan. I've been one for, I don't know, over a decade, a long time now. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. What was your Trek entry point? What series did you watch first?
Mine was Voyager.
Nice.
I was actually sick when I was like stuck in bed and I was looking at Netflix and was like, what has a lot of episodes? Because I'm going to be in bed for a long time. And Voyager just had a lot of episodes and that's why I picked it. And then I got hooked.
Nice.
From there.
Not
And
as
then
many episodes as DS9 or Next Gen. They went down through the 90s shows, but only slightly.
I just saw like, the 27 episodes and was like, yeah, this will do.
So did you watch all the way through Voyager?
Yeah.
Nice. And have you watched any other Treks?
Yeah, I've watched all of Next Gen, all of DS9. I've watched all of the movies, I think now. I've watched some of Enterprise, haven't watched all of it. I've watched most of the original series.
Nice.
Yeah, so I got a decent background.
Yeah, I mean the original series is major kudos because so many of the people we talked to are like, yeah, I love Trek, I love Next Gen, love DS9. Never saw the original. And we're like, the original's so good. I mean, okay, half of the original or a third of the original is so good.
I tell people to watch the original series like while they're watching something else. So when they need like a break, you just watch an original series episode.
The original series has some high highs, and I don't think like Next Gen. We talked about this when we reviewed Next Gen. We don't. Steven and I, at least, were of the opinion Next Gen never hit the high highs that the original series hit, but it had lower lows than Next Gen usually hit. Next Gen was more even in quality. So anybody that's down the original, I'm like, just give it a chance. I know there's some really bad episodes, but there's some brilliant. Some of my favorite episodes of Star Trek are from the original series. So.
I might be like a uber dork, but I just think it's important to see like for the basis of the rest of what happens. Like you gotta know that original series and kind of what started it all and how. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's important.
I hate to refer to anything as historic that I watched as not the original airing, but not long after the early mid-70s.
Sorry we're harping on this. We're just so excited to have somebody else that watched the original. Are there any particular original series episodes that stand out to you as like favorites or ones you recommend to people?
I don't know that I have one that I recommend. This is like a really kind of obvious one, but I was talking to my dad, who is like a Trekkie too. It's one of the things we have in common. And he was just like, I guess he had really recently watched the one where the people were black and white, like half and half.
That be your last battlefield. Yeah.
Was so like pulled in by how mad at each other they were. Like, how like much they hated each other. And it's so like stupid from the outside looking in, but like their anger was like palpable in that episode. And so I don't know, that's one's coming to my mind right now because he was really into it and just sends a good clear message. It's like a little on the nose, but
yeah. Yes, it was.
So it happens with the original series. But in the 60s, you had to be on the nose or they wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah.
And those outfits were something. You know, not only did you know their race, but you knew their religion from how tight their pants were. Have you watched a lot of the new stuff, Tara?
Oh, yeah, of course. I've watched Discovery, all of it. I've watched all of the Strange New Worlds.
Mhm.
What else is there? I'm missing something. Oh, all
Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Yeah. Actually just went to the convention in Las Vegas. And my mom and I dressed up. I was Mariner and she was Freeman.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my mom actually has like dreads and kind of like worked out perfectly.
That's
I put my
amazing.
hair up in a ponytail and it was a good time.
Watch Prodigy.
I watched the first season of Prodigy.
I gotta get caught up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Just check, because most people, I feel like a lot of the new Trek watchers skip it or haven't seen it, but
yeah.
good.
I watched
Good.
the first season and it didn't pull me in because it's less Trekky, I feel like, but
Yeah.
I do want to watch the rest of it. I'll get to it at some point.
Well, let's talk about this episode of Star Trek Voyager, The Cloud. First impressions of the episode.
Since I probably have the most first of impressions, I'll say this might be outside of TOS, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a dozen episodes, and we'll get into this deeper later. One of my favorite guest star casts, and we'll get deep into that later. Also, I'm not saying it's the best episode involving a holodeck, but it might be my favorite holodeck experience. I loved it, and Paris is moving up my list, and we'll get into it deeper later how much I love that. The rest of it, the cloud, the nebula, it seemed, I wouldn't say derivative, but it's a non quote unquote normal life form. It's a nebula. It's very immunity syndrome and not quite doomsday machine or Voyager for that matter. Voyager might be the best because Voyager was a thing, but which I didn't hate. I didn't love it necessarily. So overall, I don't know that it was a great episode, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. So I think I enjoyed all the other elements even more than here's the thing we have to get done this episode. But even the talk about the animal guides and all that, I loved all that. So again, it's that thing I've been talking about is explore and getting to know the new crew. So
yeah. Hey, Shane.
I mean, pretty classic Trek, space anomaly.
mm-hmm.
They broke something, they fix it, kind of a thing. So, a lot of strong character showings this time around. So that was really nice.
Yeah. Tara.
Yeah, I think they hit a lot of good Trek tropes in this. It's basic good Trek. There's coffee in this nebula. In that nebula is a great line, and that's like the line that's very memorable. And then for me, because I've seen it all multiple times, I know that this is like such a good character building episode. Like you were learning about everybody, and this is such a Neelix episode. Like Neelix is really like showing who he's gonna be, kind of going forward, and yeah, so I like that. Neelix is kind of my favorite in the episode.
Well, we may have some disagreement there. However, I think in general, I agree with what all of you said. I think I had told Steven, like, Voyagers learns to use the holodeck as spice for an episode rather than, like, Next Gen, it's a holodeck episode. Not that Voyager doesn't have a couple of holodeck episodes, but Voyager and DS9 later will use it as spice, which is really nice. And I thought this was good. Agree with you, character development. There's Coffee in the Nebula might be one of my top 5 favorite Throda theme song lines of all time across Trek. It's such a, if you had to pick one line of the entire series that distilled who Janeway is, there's Coffee in the Nebula. You hit her science side, you hit the coffee obsession, you hit like, we're gonna go explore because I'm a boss side.
Yeah.
And also no fear of danger, just like confidence and leading the crew into something. So perfect Janeway line. Again, I will say though, I don't think this is the best Voyager episode, but it is maybe the first Voyager episode I really feels like it's from the Trek mold, but also really serves all the characters. So yeah, it was a good, interesting conglomeration of things. We'll say that it was a lot of writers involved. It was a story by Branham Braga, who we've talked about numerous times in this podcast. Teleplay by Michael Piller, one of the co-creators, and Tom Solozzi. He only has, I shouldn't say only, he's got 35 writing credits, 2 episodes of Voyager, 1 season 1, 1 season 2, 2 episodes of Myth Quest, not Mythic Quest. Oh, this is an old show. And 3 episodes of the 70s Incredible Hulk are what he's best known for. So he's got some geek cred, I guess, in there. we start out the episode. They're talking about the captain taking a walk, and she just kind of walks it, taking a stroll, and makes Torres nervous just by being there. I do think that's obviously something that can only happen in the first season as they're getting to know one another. But I still really appreciated that scene. I feel like other Trek might have just been like, she walks in, we're having a conversation about something, and that Voyager gave us a beat and a space to talk about, this is Torres's realm, Janeway's just invaded it without warning. How are they going to react when Janeway's not trying to invade, right? Like, it was a really cool moment.
It was a cool way to do a Data's Day, but do it in 4 minutes and set up an episode rather than make it the whole episode. And to see how she's intervening. You mentioned the coffee already. I think we already talked about this a couple weeks ago, so I don't want to completely go through it again, but coffee is going to survive till the 24th century.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Even out in the galaxy, there's not going to be I feel like they've got substitutes for everything else. Even alcohol, they've got the synthetic alcohol.
Well, they've got Raktajino, which is Klingon coffee, right? They drink that a lot of DS9.
That's true. They got that. So,
but it's still coffee.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, Starbucks will not make it. Well, I say fortunately. I don't know. I don't drink coffee, so maybe it's unfortunate that they're not there. She goes into the kitchen and she's blowing on the food and then reaching in with
touching
her
it without washing her hands.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on here?
Captain's
It's Captain's prerogative, but if we'd only had her sneeze first and then just sorry.
Well, and then Neelix comes in and he actually makes sense when he's like, you gotta, you need to set an example. I thought I wrote it down. Neelix is making sense.
I agree with that.
I agree with that, and I think it was like I said, I feel like this is such a Neelix episode because it's building that relationship between Neelix and Janeway. Mm-hmm. And like the times, I mean, we'll get into this, but like he's confronting her a lot in this episode, and
yes, he is.
Like it's kind of nice
his point of view.
It's kind of nice because the Maquis even have like fallen in line because I've been on the record complaining that I wish it had taken longer for them to integrate. However, because Torres is like barely got the job and has to be careful, and Chakotay is trying to make peace and everything, nobody's going to stand up to her the way Neelix is so blatantly. So it's nice to have that element in there. And man, his kitchen is decked out. So many fruits and veggies. I'm like, this is awesome. I want to go cook in that kitchen.
Does Neelix not pick up on social cues, or does he just not care?
Yes.
I feel like Neelix does a good job of like being an alien. Like he's around all of these humans, and he's like, what are you guys doing? Like this is like not what we would do on what is it, Talaxia?
Yes.
Yeah. And that makes sense too. He's just cutting through all the nonsense. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's a good point, Chair, because he doesn't say, well, where I come from. He just says, it's the inverse of if people landed on our planet and saw people walking dogs, they think dogs ruled the planet, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is he's willing to stand up and criticize, but you also notice there's that whole conversation between Kim and Paris about should we invite her to sit with us or not, and they won't speak up to confront her. They won't speak up to compliment her either. And Neelix begins the conversation with a compliment. So he's going to speak up both sides of it, which he has a very different dynamic with Janeway than any other crew person at this point in the series.
And I'm going to, spoiler alert, he's going to be my annoying person in the episode, but Tara, I think you're starting to help me see Neelix from a little different perspective. So I appreciate that.
I did have a chuckle in the beginning during her monologue talking about captains need to keep distance from the crew, right? Except for the senior staff in every other Star Trek, where they're like so intertwined that, But yes, to the riffraff crew,
Vincents don't matter. No,
no.
During that Kim and Paris conversation before Janeway walks in, they talk about a Chinese curse about interesting times. We're going to come back to this a few times, but is this a real Chinese curse, or is this lack of cultural sensitivity in the 90s?
I'm going to lean towards the latter, but
I don't know. I mean, we're going to get into the whole animal spirit thing.
Are you asking if that is like a real thing that is?
Yeah, like is it a real saying, or were they just making some type of statement that would be seen as offensive today?
It's definitely a real thing, a real statement. I don't think it's actually a Chinese curse. It's kind of like, on the line, but it's an older thing that people say, like, I wish you interesting times, which basically is like, it sounds kind of nice, but that could be awful. Interesting is very vague.
So I googled real quick, and I only got to Chinese curse and INT, and Google filled in the rest of this. So definitely known. The Wikipedia article says, "May you live in interesting times" is an English expression that many people claim to be a translation of a Chinese curse. However, that's apocryphal, and there's no actual Chinese source ever produced. So it's an English saying that they've attributed to Chinese culture, even though it's not.
Well, there was no way to check that back then, so.
So it's very much like
Could be.
Calgon said they were an ancient Chinese secret, but it was an American.
Bring this up because we're going to get to the animal spirit guides. And as we've talked about in an earlier episode of this podcast, the Native American consultant they hired for Voyager to help fill in Chakotay's backstory and everything turned out to be a total fraud and was lying about everything.
Awesome. That you guys did that.
So I'm sure all the spirit guide stuff is BS the way all the Native American stuff Voyager and the first few seasons brought out, which is so disappointing to me. And I don't expect Robert Beltran to be totally in touch with every culture of Native American, even though he's representing one. But I feel like somebody should have are we just going to take one guy's opinion, or are we going to double check things before we, I don't know.
Like that at Kushimoya, they said it so many times, and I'm just like, did this guy tell you that that's a real phrase? Did anybody look it up? Was it supposed to be a made-up phrase? It just feels bad.
Oh, it was a whole big scandal when they found out he was faking and misleading them in all the consultation.
I will say what I loved about it, though, was really just all of Janeway's reactions, how excited she was. And I thought that whole conversation was interesting because it was another spot where, again, we've said they're building character stuff, but where they took time, and they were on the bridge, but they were still kind of having a private conversation, but how interested Janeway was in it and everything. And were they using ayahuasca?
No, they have a technology equivalent now where you put your hand on the thing and you don't have to get.
See, they've upgraded everything. They've not upgraded, but they've modernized everything except for
vomiting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the caller to the bridge, and I love the moment where Chakotay's like, "You didn't actually have to come up here," and she goes, "Yes, I did."
Because Neelix had just poured her mud.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think she respects Neelix, but also small doses.
Yeah.
The whole thing about him telling her not to use the replicator for coffee, apparently they have rations. They've got energy rations. They're running out of resources, which is a key element of this point of Voyager. So good for them of trying to conserve. And the kitchen's a great idea to conserve. I do think it's funny, and I'm pretty sure they establish in another episode soon, the holodeck runs on a different reserve than the replicators.
Okay.
They're on dedicated energy, because otherwise it does not make sense there's a holodeck in this episode.
You anticipated my next question. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's in another season 1 episode coming up. I wish it had been in this episode that they justify that. But
I thought maybe it used less energy if you left the security protocols on, turn them off all the time, like that happened in all those other holodeck episodes.
Well, the thing is, it was her ration to do with what she wanted. If everyone gets one, she could do whatever she wants. So she could make coffee.
I think Neelix's point was, do it in private in your office. Don't do it in front of the crew.
Well, that's bold of him to say that.
Maybe they're encouraged not to use the rations. If you absolutely have to, we use them, but
that's fair.
Well, let's not use it for anything, because they're all eating Neelix's food.
Right.
In Janeway's private dining room that ends up being huge, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no counselor on board either to talk about resources, and I feel like if there was a counselor, you'd have to give them a lot of screen time and add another character to the cast, so maybe that was part of why they didn't do it. But it's also a small crew on a small dedicated mission, then coming right home.
Yeah.
It sucks. Of all the missions to not have a counselor on board, they could really use a Troy in the series.
I love that they don't.
The doctor is certainly not offering any counseling. I feel like this could be, I don't think they ever go there, but I feel like this could have been a job for Cass. They could have, I know she's already growing all the fruits and vegetables and serving as the doctor's assistant, but she would probably make a pretty decent counselor if they'd let her do that realm.
While we're on Cass, and these are probably the only 2 notes I have on her for this episode, but the way she was talking was and maybe she's been doing this all along, but it's very kind of deep and breathy. And I'm like, no wonder. I'm like, is she horny? And yes, she was, because she. So
Yeah.
I'll go to my next one. Then I'll come back to this, but because she ends up using the "I've never kissed in a nebula." Isn't she the one that says it? And I'm like, one, smooth. Two, I'm going to use that whether I'm in a nebula or not. So I put that down. But so yeah, I was like, man, she's kind of got like a weird, not sing-songy, but kind of like, I'm using breath like this, but I'm still talking very dulcety. And so Jess McKenna, who is one of the regular guest voices on Lower Decks, today, and this would be 6 months in the past, but she was on the Christmas episode of Comedy Bang Bang as this character that does audiobooks of romance novels. And it was the same exact, it was very much like Kez. I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know, I'm sure she didn't pull it from that, but it was the same kind of thing. And so every guy that was on the podcast was getting turned on by her, in an improv, yes, and kind of way. But
that poor actress was like 18 or 19 at this point, and we know Rick Berman running Star Trek in this era was a big perv, so there could very well have been the directive to be all sexy and breathy, which is disappointing.
I think she's very pretty, but and of course we talked about she's 2 years old, right?
Yeah.
2 years old, a species that only lives to 9, just to get it out there.
So
she's talking all sexy and building that up, and then she kisses Neelix, and I feel like it really just drops it. I like it really, like there was a moment, and then Neelix, she's making out with Neelix, and it's just I love Neelix, but that just kind of killed the moment.
I still don't feel this series has justified the Neelix Kess relationship, but we'll see as it goes on if it ever does.
She hasn't really met many other
I'm like,
people.
we just took it for granted when I was watching these episodes when they originally aired. I don't know that I get it at this point, but
so there's the guys that I liked when I was young that I would regret.
That's true. She's in that screw up phase of her life, right?
Yeah.
She's equivalent to a college age person.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't even have to go back that far.
So this is where we get to the animal guide stuff. Chakotay says his guide is a female and she's not a bear, and that's all he's willing to say. Okay. I don't have any other notes at this point, but I just want to remind everybody, I'm pretty sure this is all BS.
Yeah.
Even though there is some animal spirit guide stuff in Native American culture, the way they're presenting it here, I would not take for granted that we should trust it at all.
I did write down J plus C equals heart.
This is like, when she says it's a date, I was like, oh.
Yeah. This is like, they have chemistry too, is the thing. Like, so it sucks that, well, we'll see what happens, I guess.
I will say I've been so disappointed we haven't got any Tuvok development yet, like to speak of. But I enjoyed the moment he gets on the bridge with Kim where they're tapping their comm badge and he's scolding Kim, and then Kim gets to scold him back.
Oh, he was sassy.
Awesome.
I loved it. Sassy Kim.
An ensign should be doing that to a lieutenant commander, let alone on the bridge, but Tuvok was being a lot, so I don't blame Kim for stepping back.
I mean, he blessed him with senior officer status, right? Isn't that what he said to him?
That's true.
He did, and Kim's only an ensign. I know he's senior staff, and he's ops. He's a senior staff member, but it still felt weird to have him tell an ensign because the other lower people on the bridge are like lieutenants. So,
Janeway and that excitement she has about the animals guide, and just like this, like very kid-like excitement. About the science of it all and how serious she takes it is like, I feel very like Janeway, and just kind of the reason I liked her so much, because like she takes things like very seriously and is really interested, and that's just kind of a cool part of her that I wanted to bring up. Yeah,
totally agree.
She was sucking me. I mean, I've enjoyed her already so far, but during that exchange, I was just like, my eyes were as wide open as hers, looking back at her like, I'm all right. Keep talking.
We're in here.
It's that explorer side of her.
I was listening to her.
Yeah. They get into the nebula, and I wrote, "It's a trap." Very Star Wars moment there, where they realize they've walked into a bad thing.
We love nebulas in the Trek world. Not one of the best nebula. Not one of the best effects.
It's no Mutara. We'll give it. We'll say that.
Yeah, not great effects, but once they get in, it was better, I thought, than when they were going in, I guess. But still not great. But it's not a movie. But still.
Yeah, the green screen when Neelix and Kess were talking was a little rough.
Yeah.
But in that scene, Neelix kind of had a point. Now they are a science vessel, so it is their nature to explore
Yes.
and to figure stuff out. However, they are very far from home and in an unknown area. So his point about she's opening every crack in the universe to peek inside, like maybe she could avoid,
Yeah.
one or two.
I like that metaphor that he made
Yeah.
about the cracks and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
They mentioned there's only 38 torpedoes, so should we start a countdown? They used once, now they have 37.
I already have a torpedo watch going.
Thank you, Shane. The shuttles, I forgive them a little more because now we've watched Prodigy, we know they can replicate shuttles. But yeah.
Paris
agreed.
says, I think around this time, I'm having trouble navigating through the energy currents. Quote, it's as thick as a Taurian ice storm out there, to which I could only say, that's what she said. So I thought that, I
thought you'd like
Taurian
that line
stuff-
just because it references something that's not Earth.
I always enjoy that. Taurian, Toarian, according to the Chakotay.net. The transcript, yeah. So I have one more. That's what she said coming up later. You guys can guess it but we'll get there.
Harry talking about his mom's womb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remembering it. Child prodigies, they're all so messed up in the head.
I wrote that down. I was like, Harry remembers his mother's womb. Remember that.
Yeah, I don't.
The scene leading up to that is Paris breaking into Kim's quarters while they're sleeping. Keith's joining us. And first of all, I'm like, he's like, how did you get in? And my immediate thought, obviously Next Gen, we talked about all the time that nobody locks their doors. Nobody, you can just walk into anybody's quarters anytime. The wide open door that nobody locks.
I really thought he was going to say that. I really was hoping he was going to say that, but he didn't.
His actual line, though, is that you'd be surprised at things you learn in prison. What the hell, Paris? What did you do?
Some people sleeping. For the audience, Keith has joined us on the podcast.
Yo.
Keith,
Hey.
we see Sandrines for the first time. I don't remember how many episodes or how many seasons we see Sandrines, but it's definitely a reoccurring set, and I appreciate that Voyager has reoccurring holodeck programs that you can just go to for recreation.
Yeah. And yeah, to your point earlier, I had the same thought of like, well, if they're in an energy shortage, why are they firing up the holodeck?
Yeah.
Different kind of energy.
I do believe there's an on-screen explanation that they're separate energy pools, essentially. But I also think there's an argument to be made about morale. They talk a lot in this episode about morale being down. If this holodeck is relatively minor energy, like if they all give up their coffee rations so that the holodeck can keep running, I feel like that would be worth it so that they have a place. I mean, at first it's just Tom's program, him coming in, everybody's like, hello, Tom, hello, Tom, hello, Tom. I almost wished it was all in unison, like Norm for Cheers. It wasn't quite that, but it was a similar feel. But by the end of the episode, like every character is really enjoying this place. I don't want to skip ahead to Janeway's reaction. We'll talk about that a little bit. But Sandrines is like, oh great, it's an oasis in the middle of a bad situation.
I wrote a question down about this, and this is maybe a general holodeck question, but how does holographic wine work? Does anyone about the holographic wine? Do they actually drink it and it disappears? Is there actually some kind of liquid that's there? Any ideas?
So it depends what episode of Star Trek you're watching. So there's definitely certain episodes where like food and drink will matter, like you consume them and they stay in your body because there's replicators as part of the holodeck technology. But then there's other episodes where it's like you're wet and you walk outside and it dries because that matter stays in the holodeck. So I would imagine it has to be how you program each specific scenario, and maybe Paris has programmed Sandrines to not let the alcohol follow you out, so that I don't know, it may have been a choice. But yeah, it definitely depends on the episode. We've seen it both ways.
Well, it could be instant sobriety. It could also be because of the rationing. Like you can't use actual replications.
Is the replicator part of the holodeck technology?
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a holodeck rule that you can't be consuming alcohol. So like nothing.
I would think it would.
Why even bother?
I would think it would be Synethol in the holodeck.
Yeah. I was asking if the original designer of the holodeck was French, because we end up in a lot of French scenarios, I feel like, between TNG and this.
We do, but Paris gave a really convincing in-canon explanation for why this was in France. He did a Starfleet Academy assignment.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, he did.
And I did like that we meet Ricky, played by Angela Dorman, who's best known for Nash Bridges, where she had 11 episodes. One episode of Seinfeld is Donna Chang, 5 episodes of The Drew Carey Show, and unfortunately, only 2 episodes of Voyager. She will only be Ricky in one other episode in season 2. But I like the little detail that Paris is like, yeah, she's in all my programs. And I feel like once the whole crew starts hanging out in Sandrines, they probably delete her pretty quick. So it's kind of surprising she's in season 2 at all. He should just remove her from this program.
I was disappointed to find that she's only 1 more episode, but I remember her as Donna Chang Steen, as you may remember from the Seinfeld episode, The Chinese Woman, I think was actually the episode. I thought I was talking to a Chinese woman. You're just some woman, some girl from Long Island. But
I thought we were past our Seinfeld discussions on this podcast.
I did too, but
not quite yet.
We're not even done tonight, at least for this episode.
Paris mentions in France they're still pickpocketing, but just for the tourists, and they usually give it back. Which, I guess if you're using credits and stuff, on Earth, it probably doesn't matter if they pickpocket your money. It would just, but if they take your ID, well, I guess they probably don't even have passports with transporter technology, and Earth being as unified as it is. It just, still, it's kind of fun that the historical reenactors would do it for fun and be like, oh, I pickpocketed you, here's your money back. I just imagine that, and it tickled me. They talk about the doctor when Kess is asking him, can't you just change your program? Or it was Torres, I think, not Kess. A hologram that programs himself, and he mentions, what would I do? Create a family, raise an army? I will say at least one of those 2 things comes to pass as the series plays out. I liked this early hint of what he would do had he had self-agency.
So sassy. I love it.
We also get the first name drop of his creator, Dr. Zimmerman, which I think in the early materials for the show, they had named the doctor Doc Zimmerman, and then they decided just to call him the doctor. But we will eventually see Dr. Zimmerman. So nice to get that, again, early establishment of stuff. Somebody mentioned earlier the animal spirit guide. You don't need the ayahuasca. You just put your hand on the pad. I feel like that's pretty cool. If you could put your hand on a pad and be high, and then you just remove it and you're not high anymore. I kind of like that.
I can't believe we haven't come up with that yet. And
it's gonna be right after Synthahol or right before one or the other. No, it is interesting that would no, I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense. Thinking about the way we're moving through, let's say, virtual reality.
I have something that relaxes me that way. It's I put my hand on my cats, but other than that, I'm not sure I have anything.
Chakotay saying medicine bundle has stuck in my brain. The way he says it, I can't hear that any other way since the day I saw that episode for the first time.
That the emphasis,
just
the way he says it, medicine bundle.
They don't give Robert Beltran a lot to do, but I really appreciate every scene we get him in.
Yeah,
he has such a presence that I enjoy on this show.
I like that he was able to assume that presence just as quickly as they could just get it going. I remember we were talking about that in the pilot or the season premiere. It just we understand we have to have these conflicts, but let's get to the point where he can work with her and just
Janeway was lucky to get him as first officer.
I think they're great together, and I think realizing that you really have 2 captains. Beltran was supposed to be a captain of his own ship, and I think he did a great job of working with Janeway and giving her the respect of a captain, but also kind of maintaining his own and maintaining that with the crew. I don't know. I think that relationship is really cool because of that situation.
It would have been very easy to have them clashing more. And while I wish the Maquis had clashed more, I don't regret the decision not to have Chakotay clash more with Janeway.
Yeah.
I like that.
That would be tedious just quickly.
Yeah.
Are the animal spirit guides that you see in the visions, are they all in Fight Club? Because we're not allowed to talk about them.
I also appreciated that hers was a salamander.
Right. You're not allowed to talk about it. But yes. I did. I just meant you're not allowed to talk about the spirit guide. Yeah, I wasn't talking about spoilers, but yeah, was it a salamander or was it some other kind of lizard? Either way,
it was just a lizard.
Close enough. Enough.
The first reaction, is that a salamander?
I know. That's really fun. Also, I like the detail that Torres tried to kill her spirit guide, which is Was it a Targ? I want to know.
I feel like this episode, and like you said, there was multiple writers. They gave you a little bit of everybody. Like they give you a little bit of everyone's personality in this episode. It just felt kind of like just getting thrown at you, which I liked, which is really good seeing that. But yeah.
I think
Tuvok is the least used of all of them, but everybody gets something.
Oh yeah, but they're not like there are episodes that are like Tuvok episodes and like Chakotay episodes, and this just kind of felt like you kind of got a little bit of everyone.
Honestly, other than Tuvok, everybody got like multiple scenes of development in this. Tuvok, I think the only thing he got in this was the comm exchange with Kim, but everybody else had like something substantive.
I can't believe that he hasn't, had more to do yet. I mean,
Neil
always hangs so big.
Like when he was bringing the plates of food around to cheer everyone up, like this might even cheer up you. Like pointing out his exterior.
Calling back the Neelix Tuvok chemistry established in the pilot.
Yeah, something that I think that we've all talked about during this, the Trek series, which is just wanting more slice of life type things, where it's this. I think this is one of the things that makes the show unique so far among the properties of them that we've seen so far, is just that it's so thoroughly serialized that they can just have conversations about coffee like that. Just to start, everything's just so much characterization. They have to keep it going constantly. It's not like you get a reset every week.
Yeah.
But that being said, you can miss 5 episodes and tune in and still understand what's going on. So it's a good balance of the two. Yeah.
They talk about what a fin is. I thought it was $10. It's $5. A sawbuck, I think, is $10. A fin is, in case it ever comes up in conversation. If you end up stuck in the 1940s, 50s or something. See here?
This is the part of the episode we find out the cloud's alive.
Yeah.
I think I saw it coming, but I don't know if I saw it coming the first time through. I've definitely seen this episode a few times, but yeah.
Figures. Just their luck.
The muting of the doctor.
Oh. The disrespect.
That whole scene when he waves for attention and Paris is like, Captain, everything about that interaction was wonderful. And I like the ways they're finding to use the doctor outside of sickbay. Because I know we're confined to sickbay for him.
Right.
But yeah, they'll find other things as the series goes on. But so far, I appreciate that at least we get a little bit of him out of sickbay. We talked about this when we went over the pilot, that of the 9 main characters, he was number 9 on the call sheet, which means they expected to use him the least. But Bob Picardo's just so good. You got to keep.
Yeah.
Great. While we're on the dirty jokes or the 12-year-old reactions to dialogue, this takes place in the doctor's office too. And actually, the 3 lines are very funny, especially considering what Torres is holding in her hand. So she says, I need a second opinion on this. And he's giving a first opinion. She says, I gave it to myself. It's a sample of residue we picked up in a nebula. And she's holding a jar of milky stuff on her residue and saying she needs a second opinion on this. So the 12-year-old in me very much, but and then beyond that, their repartee was really good. Beyond me just thinking dirty thoughts about it. So I think it
was good in this episode that the doctor as well as Neelix call out the fact that they are just going into things that they shouldn't be, and they should trying to get home. I think that's important. I think the audience is thinking that as well. Like, you'll never get home. What are you doing? And so I'm glad they address it in the show. Like, there's some people there that are like, this is not what we should be doing.
I feel like as the show goes on, they do that less and less. Thankfully.
Yeah. But in the beginning, I think it's good that they kind of just call it out. Like, this is what this is about.
I think it makes more sense than Neelix is probably realizing there, though. It's just, well, for example, I think they mentioned early on in the series that it was very unlikely that they could just like find a straight line home. I mean, they're going to have to look for like Deus Ex Machinas or something like that, or another wormhole, or some discovery, or some advancement, and also supplies. So I mean, it's not like they can just.
Yeah.
True.
Is Deus Ex Machina, is that a wormhole?
It could be.
We wish. No, then you wouldn't have 7 seasons.
It's similar to Chekhov's wormhole, I think.
Well, if you remember, there were in an episode Next Generation, there were some Ferengis that went through wormhole to the Delta Quadrant and the wormhole collapsed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stay tuned whether that gets followed up upon. I did want to mention Sandrine is played by Judy Geeson,
Yeah.
best known for To Sir with Love,
Yes.
10 Rillington Place, The Lords of Salem, and 31. She has 103 credits, so this is not one of her best knowns. She is also only in 2 episodes of Voyager. I could be wrong, and Shane would probably be the best person on this podcast right now to ask, but I thought Sandrine's was seen more than twice. But her and Ricky are both in the same 2 episodes, and I'm wondering if Sandrine's is only 2 episodes, because to me it held a larger role in Voyager.
I
Than
think she might not be there for the other ones.
Okay.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
No, there's definitely 3. There's at least 3 I can think of right now.
Because
Okay.
our guy, Easy Yeti or Claude Gary, he's in 3 episodes.
You're talking about Daunt Gary, played by Larry
That's
Hankin.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's best known for. I mean, he looks very familiar, but he's best known for El Camino,
Friend.
Barry, Breaking Bad, where he played Old Joe in 2 episodes. The Outlaw. I mean, he has 196 credits.
So he was in my favorite Rob Reiner movie, The Sure Thing, great movie from the 80s, one of John Cusack's early ones. And he gets to say the titular line, a sure thing. Never had a sure, my whole life I never had a sure thing. He's a truck driver that gets John Cusack to meet with a very young Nicolette Sheridan. We were all younger then. It was 1984 or 85. But anyway, so that's right. But also, he on Seinfeld played the actor who played Kramer.
Oh,
Tom
okay.
Pepper.
So yeah, so
That was good
Seinfeld
casting for that.
person. So I was very excited to see him.
Also
And
in an
then-
episode of Next Gen back in season 5 as Wind Dancer,
Yeah.
uncredited.
And then just to go back to Judy Geeson, yeah, she was in To Sir with Love. She was if you guys know the song To Sir with Love by Leslie Gore, who also did, or maybe I think it was Leslie Gore did the song To Sir with Love. I think it was the #1 song. But that song's essentially Judy Geeson's character singing to Sidney Poitier's character, who's the teacher in an English boarding school, I think, or maybe it's
I remember that movie.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it in 50 years, but I love Judy Geeson. I loved her in it, so I was very excited to see her. I saw her name in the guest star early on. I was very excited. So that was very exciting.
So,
great cast, great guest cast.
looking at Larry Hankin, the 3 episodes of Voyager, he's in the same 2 as the actresses playing Sandrine and Ricky, but his third one's in the middle of them. So I'm guessing that's like a brief Sandrine scene that they just didn't have everybody there. And then their 4th guest star from Sandrine's is the Gigolo, is what he's credited as, Luigi Amodeo. Perhaps not surprisingly, this is his only episode of Star Trek. He does not appear in their future appearances, but I liked his presence purely for the Janeway reaction later. Again, I don't want to discuss that too deep right now. We'll get to that, but I liked his presence for that bit.
I thought you were going to say it's his only credit as an actor. Period.
No, he has 33 credits. He stood for BAPS, which it has little stars between the letters like MASH. I don't know what BAPS is. The Animal, starring Rob Schneider. This episode of Voyager, and a movie called Art House from 1998. So not a lot of credits. Neelix brings snacks to the bridge, which I thought was a good scene, well justified. However, as he's handing them out, he says, "Don't eat the little pink things." And I'm like, then why are they there?
Right.
If you're not allowed to eat them.
Garnish.
I really wanted to see the bridge get shook at that point, and the food just goes up in the air. Whoa! But
God.
no, didn't
I
happen.
liked Janeway's dismissal of it and then willingness to try it. Like, again, good Janeway. She has her lines, but she knows when to bend a little bit. And then I really kind of felt like after she took a bite, we should see more officers take a bite. But I also really enjoyed before Janeway took a bite, the woman in the background who was already eating, and then they all got scolded for eating, and she just kind of like shyly put the appetizer down and kept working.
I feel like we skipped over Neelix coming in when they were going back in to like fix the problem. So when he storms back into her office and is like, "We're doing this again. Are you crazy? Like, I want to get off the ship." And she's like, "Get out, or you're dismissed."
Yeah.
That's
She put him in.
Starfleet for get out.
Yeah. Just put him in his place. I love it. Just like, we're not. Listen.
Right.
If you're too scared to be on the ship, like, get off. But when we're done,
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's when they get the Jonah
Yeah.
away.
yeah.
Which I
That
thought
was a good moment. You're both right.
Oh yeah, and my favorite part of that is what her last line when she says "dismissed." That's the
Yeah.
expression for get out. I love that.
When,
Just
when they're on
to-
the bridge in that scene and things are going down, Paris several times call her ma'am. And I get the first time it might be considered crunch time, but then it wasn't crunch time anymore. And I'm like, I thought they were only allowed to call her ma'am during crunch time. As they established in the pilot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Or is Paris just allowed to call her whatever he wants? Because he's Paris, charming rogue. He can get away with whatever.
Yeah.
If it was Harry Kim, he would have been shut down.
Yeah. Poor Harry.
They surf through the circulatory system, which gets me to my alternate episode that it's Star Trek Voyager on the Magic School Bus, and Miss Fritz takes them into the nebula.
I did want to point out too that there are these little moments with Harry Kim where she looks at him and he has like the answers to like fix things. Like it's not big, but they just kind of keep throwing to Harry Kim like, how are we gonna get through this? And showing that he's kind of like the genius ensign that he is.
The genius ensign that will never be promoted.
Yep.
Like, can't get enough things right, Harry.
They end up losing about 20% of their power reserves, and they decide they're going to go out of their way to search for energy, which, again, I'm grateful this episode's laying the groundwork of. We have a resource issue. We need to deal with resources, because it's just not believable otherwise, because any other Starfleet ship can just check in at the nearest starbase and recharge. So that's the difference here.
It's something that's hard to. It's still hard for me to get my head around how that works. I know it's a storytelling device. It's arbitrary. I mean, they can do whatever they want as far as that goes. But it's just something that hasn't, as far as I can recall, hasn't had to come up, and for other ships and other shows, because obviously there's
Starbase. Yeah.
But I don't know. They made it seem as though the warp engine was somehow
generating.
What's what I'm looking for. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Self-repairing to lithium or self-replicating to lithium, something like that. They talked to Scotty about it in the Next Gen episode, Relics. That the lithium constantly regenerates.
So I guess I thought of it sort of like the Tony Stark arc reactor thing. Just plug it in, it just powers everything. It's powering his whole suit just forever or whatever.
Gotcha.
As long as it's not damaged. So it's
the lithium must just be for the engines, not for the warp drive, not for everything.
But they were looking for dilithium in the cave episode I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Cave episode they were, yes, which confused me as well because of the Scotty thing. In this episode, they were looking for something else.
Omicron.
So separate energy sources, I guess. Maybe
Probably
their
different ways
dilithium was damaged when they were tossed by the caretaker because he damaged a lot of things.
There's probably different ways to power. You could probably, transmute things from.
So some of their phasers run on AA, some run on AAA, so the rifles run on double Ds. So
that's why they don't use them that often.
Shouldn't some of these shouldn't a lot of stuff be solar powered? You think?
You think?
We can only occasionally fly near suns. That's the problem with solar power on a starship. That's what Voyager's doing in the opening credits. It's skimming the planets and flying by suns to recharge its solar cells.
Why haven't they tried a slingshot maneuver back to the Alpha Quadrant?
Because they'd go back in time if they did the slingshot maneuver around the star. Keith, haven't you seen Star Trek 4?
Well, they just do it twice. That's one to get there, and then one other one to go to the correct time, and just
they keep slingshotting, and they end up in a different person's body each week. And then so it's Fantastic Voyage meets Quantum Leap.
Oh God.
Hey, we should pitch this to somebody.
It's too late now. Voyager's been off the air for 20 years, but
for Quantum Leap, you should be pitching it to the Enterprise series.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Quantum Leap just got canceled for the second time last spring after I really liked the Quantum Leap reboot.
I appreciate the end and Janeway's sharking of the whole bar.
The pool thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like that Kim invited her, first of all.
Yeah.
Which good there. But yeah, her like acting like she didn't know what pool was and then immediately sinking like 4 balls. Yeah, that was wonderful. And that's
Great.
That's all I got.
I think
other than this episode was directed by David Livingston, one of our regulars.
There you go.
I was just gonna say that I think that moment. I'm a huge Janeway fan, and I guess I started with Voyager, like I said, so kind of really stuck with me. But Janeway has this good way of just being such a good scientist, but also just like really cool Like she's like a very cool person.
Yeah.
And that's like that moment really showed that of like, I'm gonna hustle you all. Just
Yeah.
for my own laughs.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, and all those elements are. I'm loving her very much as well. I mean, so far she's the most attractive Captain to me. I mean, right after Shatner.
Well, you haven't seen Cisco with the bald head and the goatee.
No.
That's my captain.
I still doubt anyone's gonna beat Bill Shatner for me, but
Oh,
I mean,
last line, she's
gotta
just
see- I can't pull him down right now. You gotta see Cisco at his coolest, Steven, and then you might change your mind.
they got into all this dog talk at the end.
Yeah, we're more cat people on this
Yeah,
podcast.
that's sort of like asking a hurt dog not to bite you while you tend its wounds. You like dogs, Mr. Paris? Yes, ma'am. I always had a dog. I like dogs too, but Chloe was not happy with all this dog talk. Clearly,
I don't blame her. I wasn't either.
Yeah, so Chloe was literally next to me and looked at me like, "What is this?" My last note is my alternate episode was, I think it's after they sustain damage and they're doing the damage report. Kim says electroplasma leaks reported on deck 14. Repair crews are being dispatched. So I want to see the episode, and I want to see the electroplasma repair team. They're just sitting around, probably eating chili or whatever, and then a ding, 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 ding. Finally, it's our time to go. And the three of them sprint out and
lower deck
repair the electroplasma leak. So that is my alternate episode.
Nice.
When they're going in, it's either going in or coming out. I hear Paris yell, inertial dampeners are all offline, and I'm just like, they're always offline. Like the first thing that happens is the inertial dampeners are offline, and it just was like, oh, okay, obviously.
Very touchy. Yeah. Let's get to the rankings then.
Okay.
Who do you want to have a drink with in the cloud, Steven?
So this was difficult for me between Pamela from To Serve With Love versus Donna Changstein. Eventually, I went with Judy Geeson's from England, so I went with the accent.
Sandrine?
I've had a crush on her for 20 years longer than Donna Changstein. So Judy Geeson it is.
I went with
Sandrine.
Sandrine. Yeah, I went with Janeway, and I'm going to have that drink in Sandrine's because obviously.
Yeah.
Keith, who are you in a drink with?
I was thinking Janeway, trying whatever that
Also
the sludge was that Neelix made.
Such a good episode.
It would be sort of like doing like a Malort shot with her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good call.
Shane, who are you in a drink with?
I'm having a drink with the doctor because no one turned him off.
You're not wrong. Sarah?
Maybe Chakotay, so I could do that, like, get high.
Mm.
Well, it's not a drink anymore. You just put your hand on the pad. But
Exactly. Like, go have a drink and then, like, find an animal guide.
nice. I like that.
Medicine bunker.
Who annoyed you this week, Steven?
I'm going to stick with Neelix, but I appreciate Tara's giving me a new way to look at him, which I actually really appreciate. But nonetheless, he is not spared this week.
Seconded. Steven and I, this is both of our 2 weeks in a row for Neelix, and 3 of the 5 so far we're all for Neelix on both Steven and I. However, I agree Tara did do a lot to justify the way he is. I still was like, I wrote this down before we talked, but I have a little more sympathy, but I'm still like, dude, they're allowed to go in the nebula. Slow your roll, calm down. Neelix was annoying me. Keith.
Actually, I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, in the sense that I did agree with what Tara was saying as far as an average person in that situation would think that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of commentary that they probably needed to make for people watching at home who weren't thinking through the scientific aspect, whatever, the whole. But I think I went with the gigolo.
The gigolo. I mean, he was charming. I'll give you that for sure. Shane?
While I was very tempted to put Neelix down, I ended up going with Harry Kim. He was just so whiny this episode.
I mean, his comeback to Tuvok was a bit whiny there.
Oh,
but also, like, why are you freaking my quarters? I was trying to sleep. Dude.
Yeah.
Paris broke in. It's not
Yeah.
You were in bed at 8 o'clock. You can go out with Paris.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got from that scene was that Kim went to bed really early, and that's why Paris could just Anyway,
Was he actually under blanket? Because usually
Yeah.
they sleep on top of him, so that's good.
yeah. Tara, who are you having a drink? Or who was annoyed you? Sorry.
I'm gonna go with like all of the prostitute gigolos. Just
The
like
Gigolo and Ricky.
little space. Like if they were all over everyone, like a little air.
Basically everyone at Sandrine's.
Yeah.
Okay.
That says something about Paris's program.
Paris.
Yes.
I get that. Steven, who inspired you this week?
I was torn between Kim and Paris because I like that Paris had this. His holodeck is fantastic. I think I'm gonna go with Kim though because he's like, "What's that?" Yeah, and Sassin with Tuvok and all that. I enjoyed that. So he inspired me to probably go up and talk to somebody I shouldn't in the near future.
I really wanted to go with Chakotay, but because I know the Animal Spirit Guide stuff was BS, I couldn't. So I went. I know I'm becoming cliche at this point, but for the 4th out of 5 episodes, I went with Janeway. Her love of science, her excitement to go in. I mean, so far, Janeway is the one that's just getting me through every episode. I love that character so much and what they're doing with her. Keith.
The Doctor.
Yeah.
He was fun.
The scientific repartee with B'Elanna Torres. I really like that whole thing. So
That's a really good answer.
What am I going to do with this sample?
Yeah, mine was Paris because he programmed a whole holodeck thing, which like that can't be easy. And in what spare time, he's their lead, pilot,
our nurse and their pilot.
Yeah.
Well, he's been relieved of nurse duties now, so
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Tara.
All right, so I'm going to be hated, but it's Neelix who inspired me. If we think about Neelix in this episode, he was so mad in the beginning, just like, we're doing this again, and so frustrated. And he turned it around and he was like, you know what? I'm here. Let me figure out how to be a helpful version of whatever this is, and became morale officer. He created that. He's like, you know what? I feel bad. Other people probably feel bad about this. Like, let me cheer some people up. So Neelix,
that's pretty good.
Take some initiative there.
You're not going to be hated because you did a really good job turning us around on him in this episode. The morale officer we didn't mention, but that is a new job for him. He's the cook, he's the guide, and he's the morale officer. And that's something I feel like sticks. Sort of.
Yeah. That's my goal in life: turning people like for Neelix.
I'm not against Neelix. I just haven't enjoyed him in these early episodes. I know there's episodes later I really enjoy him in, but so far he's been pretty annoying. So he's like, to go back to DS9, because we're on season 3 now, but he's like Bashir in season 1 of DS9, where I absolutely could not stand Bashir for like a season and a half, and then all of a sudden Bashir became a beloved character. And I feel like Neelix is going to go through a similar arc.
I see that for sure.
Bashir was absolutely insufferable.
He was insufferable. He was. And I'm glad they turned that down and made him a human.
They wanted to make him a ladies' man, and they just didn't do it in any way that was relatable or
hard to
tell. Hopefully he's still cool next week when we do next week's episode. I hope he's.
I think I have confidence that I'm going to like Bashir next week's episode, but we'll have to wait a whole nother week to talk about that, Steven. Not
just
5
little
minutes.
Tease, just little tease.
Ranking the episode, I'm going to start at the top. Better or worse than Parallax. As Tara pointed out, each character really got beady stuff, and there was a lot of nice setup in this episode. So I'm going to say this was better.
Yep.
Yeah. I just hate those episodes, so.
Steven, are you going to be the lone dissenter?
No, I'll make it unanimous.
Okay, so this went to number 1 of 5 episodes already.
Wow.
Pretty cool. Next week, Deep Space Nine Profit Motive Grand Negus Zek is acting bizarre by giving away money and rewriting the rules of acquisition. Quark attempts to get the old Negus back. Until then, live long.
And to quote our good buddy Neelix, be smart enough to go around nebulas and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?